Father's Day, and like millions up and down the country, we've dutifully sent cards, made phone calls, and perhaps even made a special lunch for our fathers. The question is this done out of love or duty? What I want to explore in this short film is how people feel about their fathers, and what better a place to start than to ask, what are fathers really necessary?
100% dads are necessary. They set an amazing role model for like what male should aspire to be and what a female should aspire to kind of look for in a partner.
Without a dad, I don't think you get taught how to behave, how to really express yourself. And even though us men aren't great at expressing ourselves, without a dad, you express yourselves in ways that are often damaging and painful to others.
If I didn't have my dad, I really wouldn't be able to get through a lot of things I already did go through, because he's so strong. He taught me how to be so strong and how to like rise above like nasty people and just be myself.
So do you think that dads are necessary?
No. No, in every possible way. I don't think that dads are necessary. I think that especially as society is now, I think that so much pressure is put onto mothers to be all caring and all supporting, whereas dads are kind of let off a little bit.
I am a single mom, but I think children need a father figure.
He will say that line. This is Lana, everyone. She said hello. Are dads necessary? Heck yeah, dads are necessary. Is water necessary? Is oxygen necessary?
The human story. Without us even knowing, our lives begin when we are nestling nicely in our mother's womb. From the moment that we hit the light, our story begins. Sometimes, our first embrace is with our father. This glimpse of a father may be the beginning of a lifelong embrace. That link is what fairy tales are made of. But more often than not, it is the beginning of a roller coaster of emotions.
Okay, what makes a good father? Say no occasionally. Don't say yes all the time.
I thought he was a person who seemed to know everything.
You can only teach love if you've had love.
I did wait till quite late in life to have a child, partly financially and partly because I needed to grow up slightly before I had a child.
Someone who gets up before the kids on a Sunday morning to make pancakes or crepes, and then still has time to get out for a bike ride before they even wake up.
What makes a good father? I think a good father is somebody who is supportive of their children, who creates a safe environment for them, who doesn't drop his script.
Mum, you're in shock. Describe your dad in 3 words.
Laid back, immature, and supportive.
I spent an awful lot of my children's childhood talking about choices and consequences, and tried to empower them to make choices, but also to get them to think through the consequences of their actions as well.
Sort of listening to your children and getting to know your children and believing in them.
3 main things to being a good father. 1, supportive, and then you've got to be loving, and you've got to put your child's needs above your own.
Someone that's like always got your back, so like you know that in like no matter what the circumstance, I will always be there.
It's just knowing that no matter what happens, I can always rely on that.
For me, the most important thing that makes a good father is someone who is obviously loving and supportive, but I think the most important gift they can give is that around self-belief.
Someone who knows, who kind of lets you know that they are always going to be there for you and support you on whatever journey your life takes.
What makes a good father?
That's a really good question. What makes a good father? When I find out, I'll tell you.
He needs to have a good sense of humour and be fun to be around. Isn't that right, Jake?
being a dad would be similar for me as the worst thing about being a mum is if you ever feel helpless.
I think maybe the responsibility and the fear of responsibility, like the fact that you have such an impression on this child that you have obviously brought into the world, and if you do something wrong, then that child's life is just affected for forever. You know, it shapes who they are as a person.
The hardest part of being a dad is the guilt. Every day you wonder whether you've done the right thing. Have you done too much, too little, too hard, too soft?
Worst thing about being a dad, probably having a teenage daughter. That was probably really brutal for him. I was a nightmare. I was a nightmare, and I commend him for it.
What's the worst thing about being a dad? I think the thing about that is the responsibility. I think that we all set off in parenthood thinking that having a kid's going to be fine. And at some point they're all going to be grown up and they're going to leave us and life will go back to normal, but that's not the case. I have a 30-year-old who still phones and asks for advice.
What is the worst thing about being a dad? Paying the bills. It's the worst thing. I know because I am a mother and a father, so I can say that. Paying the bills is really hard.
The worst thing about being a dad is there is no worst thing. Everything is awesome about being a dad. Right, Lana?
You may look like your father, and you might see that as a blessing or a curse. In my case, my curly hair has sparked discussion about my ethnic heritage, but we do share many other traits with our fathers, some that we're more likely to make public than others.
My temper. No, my dad's actually really calm these days, but no, don't include these days.
Like, what characteristics do you share with him?
Talking a lot.
One of the nicest things that happens is we get the giggles together, and that's fairly hopeless because once that starts, it's really difficult to stop, even if it's entirely inappropriate.
They always say you look so much like your mum or your dad. Well, I sort of look a lot more like my mum, but I definitely act a lot more like my dad, and we definitely share the same sense of humour.
Both pretty stubborn.
My appearance, my facial appearance and my body appearance is quite very similar to my dad's.
The biggest personality trait I notice is that I walk into the bathroom and look in the mirror and say, Dad, what are you doing there?
I was 19, so I miss the fact that he's missed so much of my life, that I've now been alive without him longer than I was alive with him.
Hopefully he'd be happy, but I think he'd probably think I've never been responsible enough to have 3 children.
What do you miss most about your dad? Everything. Just everything.
I miss everything about my dad. He's been dead 5 years now, and I still think about him every day.
I miss the fact that he isn't there just to have my back all the time. He always supported me and always looked out for me.
I miss that I don't get to call him and hear what my weather is going to be wherever I am in the world before I even have an idea, because he always knew.
Sometimes a relationship with our fathers is encapsulated in a series of moments. These special moments are so important to us that they are stamped into the deep recesses of our minds and stay with us for the rest of our lives. It could be argued that these memories, good or bad, shape the people that we become. Here are some of these memories. Let's start with the good ones.
I think one of the best memories was maybe driving to my wedding with my dad in the car and like kind of having a chat and sort of the excitement of it all.
I think my favourite memory of him was
walking me down the aisle at my wedding.
My funniest memory with my dad is he's got a terrible sense of humour, which is probably where mine has come from too. And we were at a family gathering. My brother had moved house quite quickly in rapid succession, and my dad turned around to him and said, "James, you get through houses like Emma gets through husbands." And I'd just literally gone through my second divorce at the time. Everyone thought it was highly hilarious, apart from me, but it's now a family joke.
I think the best thing that I can say about my dad is his weirdness. And his humour. He is so weird, and his humour is so childlike.
One of my favourite and funniest memories with my dad is when he accidentally put liquid soap in the mac and cheese.
I think going to the fun fair is definitely the happiest memory I've got.
But I've struggled with this one. I don't really have a funny memory of him. He was a pretty taciturn, distant fella.
What is your funniest memory with your father?
To be honest, I don't really have that many that I can probably pick and choose from, just because a lot of my memories with my dad I have kind of pushed to the back of my mind, and the only times that he would really speak to me is if he wanted to make me feel inferior or push me down or discipline me.
I have many funny memories. Unfortunately, I don't have one with my father. Not because he was a bad father, but I just don't remember anything particularly funny. Actually, I do have one. My funniest memory with my father, but maybe it wasn't funny, was when I was given as a Christmas present a large box which was wrapped and under the tree, and I left it till last, and I was really excited and found that when I opened it, it was a filing cabinet that had belonged to my brother and sat in his room for a number of years. Quite funny. Not at the time though. What is your saddest memory with your father? It could be that one as well.
My last memory of my dad, well, I was at his beside him when he passed away. That is one of the last memories. But my last memory that I'll never forget was on my 50th birthday. And it was the last time he actually came out and socialised. And it was really nice for him to come to see me on my birthday.
The last thing I can really think that I actually remember properly was we were all, me, my sister and my mum in the nursing home with him, watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which I don't know if it was his favourite film, but I know it was one of his favourites.
My last memory of him was probably the night before he died. We actually had a few words the night before he died. He'd been suffering with some so he kept saying indigestion, but obviously now looking back on it, symptoms of angina and things that we didn't know at the time. And unfortunately that evening before he died, he'd again been suffering with these symptoms, and I'd had a bit of a shout at him that he should be seeing a doctor, but typical man of his era, he was not keen on doing that. So we'd had a few words. We went to bed. I don't think we went to bed angry at each other or anything, but we found him the next morning. He'd suffered a massive heart attack. So unfortunately, my last memory of my dad was not the happiest one, but yeah, it's a bit of a hard one to deal with, I think.
My dad isn't around anymore. We lost him in August of 2018, and from cancer. He'd just been given some pain medication or something like 10 minutes before, and it kicked in, and he was able to he didn't sit up as such, but become awake, become aware, and was able to function. It was only for 10 minutes or so that evening, but he knew that he wanted to say it, and so even he was slurring his words and everything like that, but he was able to go around every single person in that room and say to them what he wanted to say.
I remember when he was obviously ill and in bed at home, going to his room and having a really lovely time with him. No one else was in the room, and he had bowl of fruit or something by his side. I remember he had some grapes and a banana or something, and he gave me a banana, and it was like this really intimate little special time between us. And I remember him saying
And I find it extraordinary thinking that I was so young at the time to remember this, but I remember him saying, you know, if you come back, when you come back and see me tomorrow, I'll see if, you know, I can make sure there's a packet of crisps beside my table that you can have, you know, it's between us type of, you know, I'll keep them especially for you sort of conversation. And when I went back the next day, I guess, he'd gone and I never saw him again. Maybe that's why I like crisps so much.
When I started researching this documentary, I was surprised to find how many people would find it too difficult to talk about their fathers, whether their father was alive or dead. It's as if talking about their father would be peeling back a plaster that would expose a raw wound, a wound that a passing or time had not healed.
I wish I said I loved them more, because we had a really jokey relationship and I don't think it was always something that we necessarily verbalised.
The saddest memory with my father would be not speaking to him when I was about 21 for a couple of years because he didn't support me doing what I wanted to do.
I grew up having a very, very difficult relationship with my dad. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that he and I connected in a way that I never would have imagined.
My saddest memory of him is watching him have to say goodbye to his own son, too young, and offering to go in his place, which is a terrible memory for me and still makes me cry thinking about it.
And your saddest?
Oh my God, you'll make me cry now. When he told me he'd got incurable cancer.
Aww.
That was sad because he told me not to tell his wife, my mum.
The only sad thing I remember is obviously when him and my mum broke up, and I remember the whole night of that happening, obviously them two arguing. It was pretty traumatic.
The saddest memory of my father was actually at my granddad's funeral. It was a real shock to me to see my dad be so upset.
Saddest memory with my dad was talking to him after his wife died, my stepmother, and I'd been through a separation. So it was the first time that we actually talked properly about things, and we laughed and cried a bit, but more importantly, I realised what true love was, because he really loved Pauline.
Dad was an alcoholic and he died because he was an alcoholic. I have had my own problems with alcohol and have been sober for almost 2 years, and I've been overcoming these problems. I know he'd be proud of me for doing that. I sometimes think if, because I've managed to quit drinking, if he had still been around and I could have helped him, you know, and anyway, he'd be proud.
What is your saddest memory with your father?
When I was 19 and I found him when he'd attempted to commit suicide. I think that's probably the saddest moment. Maybe afterwards as well was a really sad moment, because we went to visit him in the hospital like a couple of weeks after, because he'd been admitted into mental hospital, and he was just so not himself. He was so vulnerable and he was so scared and just really upset, obviously, and not himself. So I think seeing him in that state was probably one of the most... sorry, I'm getting a bit choked up now. It was really upsetting to see him like that, because my dad's quite a big character. He's like 6'4", he's huge, and he just seemed so small when he was in the hospital, and that was a really upsetting moment, I think.
We all dread this moment, but it will come. All too often, what we want to say to our fathers is not said until the funeral, and what we wish we'd said while they were still alive plagues our minds for many years afterwards. Here are some final words from those who have already been left behind, and those who know that it is a place they will eventually come to.
Thank you for letting me have the responsibility and kind of choice to do what I wanted, and supporting me even if you didn't always think it was the best decision, but allow me to make those mistakes.
He was always there to answer my questions. Thank you for being you.
I hope that he knows how much I love him and how he has shaped my life and the person that I am today.
Wow, I hope I do get this opportunity, but I think it's around saying thank you for the opportunities that you've given me, and also I love you. Thank you.
The last thing I would like to say to my dad is, job well done, Dad. You did a great job.
Well, I hope you're very proud of who I've become, because it's mainly down to you.
The last thing I'd like to say to my dad before he dies is thank you for just being there.
More things unsaid. You know, just the usual stuff that I loved him and that he was a good man, even if he had difficulty showing it.
What is the last thing you would like to say to your dad before he dies?
This was really difficult. I probably would just, for more his peace of mind than mine, I would just tell him that I forgive him for everything. That I don't hold a lot of hate in my heart for him. Whether or not that may be true, I would just let him maybe be confident in the fact that, like, I don't hold anything against him.
I couldn't have had a better father if I'd gone out and chosen one myself. And I feel particularly blessed and particularly lucky to have had you as my father, because I was adopted.
I would like to say I love you, because I do, because I've grown very close to him in the last few years. But I'd probably choose something funnier, like, can we go and play golf now?
Today is a reminder that time is not on our side. It's time to forgive, time to make peace, time to heal, time to put past wrongs right, time to say thank you, time to show a new appreciation, time to celebrate a life.
He was in bed, and we knew those were his last days. So when we said goodbye that day, he said, "My love, goodbye, my love." Those were his last words.